guys, Marco the dog trainer here. Today we're going to do a quick review of the Amazon Basics Cooling Elevated Dog Bed. So in this video, I decided to set up the large and the extra large model because those are the two that I use the most frequently with my dogs. But there are 4 different sizes available from small up to extra large. So in the video description, I will put links to all 4 sizes so you can kind of check out whatever one fits your needs the best. Now, for the most part, they're all pretty much the same bed. It's just the dimensions that change. The only one that's a little bit different is the extra large model. It just has an extra kind of support piece to it. So later on in this video, when I show you guys the assembly of how to put these beds together, I'll point out what that extra piece is for the extra large bed in comparison to these smaller models. So I also decided to bring out my dogs today just to give you guys a little bit of like a reference of size and weight versus the size of the bed. So we've got Forrest, the German Shepherd. He's on the large bed. Forrest is probably about 70 pounds. We've got Bosco, the Pit Bull, who's about 45 pounds. Cosmo, the Terrier mix, he's probably about 45 pounds. And then we've got Enzo, the Poodle, who's about 65 pounds. Now, let's kind of get into, my preference for these specific beds. So over the span of my dog training career, I've worked with a lot of different dogs with a lot of different beds. And over time, I just found myself gravitating more and more to this kind of elevated style of bed. So the majority of the time that I'm going to recommend a bed to one of my clients, it's usually going to be the Amazon Basics elevated bed. So let's go over the main reasons why I recommend this to my clients. So the first thing is that it's really inexpensive. I'm not going to say it's the fanciest bed in the world. It's definitely not one of the fancy kind of furniture, wooden type beds. It's a pretty basic bed, but it suits all the needs of what you would need out of a dog bed. If we're talking about the kind of fancy orthopedic, like foam type beds, a lot of times those beds are like twice the cost and they last like half as long as this type of bed. So I do like those kind of cushiony type beds, from time to time. But I think the majority of the time, I think that these beds just last longer and work a little bit better. So that's the first thing. For how inexpensive they are, I think that they bring a lot of value. Now, the second thing that I really like about this type of bed is probably going to be the main appeal to a lot of people is the fact that it has a kind of cooling aspect to it. So in my dog training, we are really, really heavy on teaching dogs to lay down and stay on their bed. And if our dogs are going to be on their bed for a long period of time, we want to make sure that their temperature is easily regulated. So this is probably more of an issue for like shepherds, poodles, doodles, any dog with a really, really thick fur, huskies. But a lot of times, like we can kind of get the best of both worlds. So my pit bull here, he's got a thin, coat. He's not typically overheating. If anything, he's typically cold. So I don't know if you can see it here in the video, but the reason I like the extra large bed is that I'll kind of fold up a blanket and put it on half the bed. So if he's cold, he'll kind of go to that half of the bed and bunch the blanket together and kind of sleep on that. If he's getting hot, he moves to the more ventilated side of the bed. So I like that because we can kind of get, the best of both worlds. And another thing I've seen people do with this type of bed is they'll take it and they'll put it above like an air conditioning vent. So that way there's a constant source of cold air coming up and underneath to help keep the dogs cool. Okay, so that's the second thing, the cooling aspect. Now, this the blanket that I was talking about is going to kind of lead us into the third reason I like this bed, was that these are very, very easy to clean. So like once a week, I take the blanket off and I just throw it in the wash. And then, every so often, if the beds are getting dirty, I'll spray them down with disinfectant and just wipe it down. Because there's not anything like absorbent on it, there's not really anywhere for anything to get soaked in. So they're just really easy to keep clean. If we're using like a foam bed or a fabric type bed, unfortunately with dogs, it's almost inevitable that at some point they might get sick and have an accident or throw up or something kind of like that. And if that happens on a foam type bed, it is almost impossible to clean that bed to its kind of initial state out of the box. It's almost never the same after a dog has an accident on it. So that's why, like, a lot of times I just like these beds because they're easier to clean, especially if we have like a one-off accident or something kind of like that. And blankets tend to hold up better when they're being cleaned in the wash frequently. Those, fabric beds that even if you can pull the foam out, the more you wash them, the zippers start coming undone, and it just shortens the lifespan. Okay, so that's the next thing. They're easy to clean and they're pretty durable. Okay, now the last component of why I recommend these beds to my clients is going to be more so related to training. So like I said, the first thing is that, I'm really, really big on teaching dogs to lay down and stay on a bed. So I already said that we want their temperature to be nice and comfortable. Now, the second thing is that, if we're working with like puppies or maybe a dog that's just really struggling to understand this concept of staying on the bed, something about the bed being elevated, more of like a platform, I think can help some dogs connect the dots to stay on the boundary. By no means am I saying you need a bed like this to teach a spot or a place command, but there are definitely situations that I've seen it help, more so with puppies a lot of the time. Now, the last kind of training component of why I like these beds is going to be related to like puppies. Puppies, they tend to chew a lot, especially if they're on their bed and they're kind of bored. They're going to start, trying to sink their teeth into anything that they can. So if we're talking about like a foam bed or a fabric bed, they start to rip that stuffing out and it just opens up the doorway of now, like, we've probably started the beginning of the end of that dog bed, because there's something really satisfying about ripping a bed apart for a puppy. I think it's almost like it's a giant chew toy. So a bed like this, there's no filling on it. There's very little, fabric for them to sink their teeth into. Now, I'm not saying that this bed is entirely chew proof. I'm sure with consistency, they could probably start to pull a little bit of a thread out, but this bed is going to last way longer than any type of fabric bed or something like that as far as chewing is concerned. Okay, so those are the main reasons why I recommend this bed to most of my clients. So why don't we take this apart, and I'm going to show you guys what it's like to put it back together, and then we'll probably wrap up the video from there. Okay, guys, so this is, for the most part, what it looks like when everything is taken apart. If you lay everything out, when you get it out of the box. Now, the only thing I didn't do is I just left this piece in, just because it's a little redundant and I don't want this video to be longer than what it needs to be. But I just left this side in because we're going to be showing you what it looks like when we put that one together. Okay, now in the box, it's going to come with a tool that you can use to put this thing together, so you don't need to go out and buy anything. Now, the first step is going to be putting all the different poles in. Okay, so the longest poles are going to be in the front and back. Okay, and then the shorter poles are going to be more lengthwise. And once you kind of get that pushed in, then we're going to be putting these in. Now, the one thing you have to be careful of with this is that you'll see one side has a little bit of like an indent in it. I'll bring it a little closer so you can see. Okay, this little indented piece should be facing out. Okay, so when you put it in, just make sure that the indented side is facing away from the bed. Okay, and then there's also a little bit of like an arc on this horizontal pole that will line up with the shape of the inside of this piece. Okay. And I'm going to start by just using my fingers, and I'll probably tighten everything once I get the whole bed kind of put together. Again, making sure that the little indented piece is facing out. think the first few times I put this together, I did it backwards and had to redo the whole thing. Okay. All right, and then like I said at the beginning of the video, the other side I just left put together. So that is going to be a little bit faster for me to show you how to put this thing together. And pretty much all the different sizes have the same, very, very similar assembly. The biggest bed, this extra large one, does have one extra component to it that the other ones do not have. Okay, and I'll show you guys that here in a second. Okay, so now that I've got the bulk of it put together, now I'm going to go through and tighten these with the wrench. Because the first time I did it, I was trying to tighten them all like one at a time as I was putting it together, and it just kind of throws things out of whack a little bit. So that's why I recommend only kind of half screwing them first until everything's put together, and then go through and tighten everything. And something I did not point out earlier in the video is that you can actually get a green version of this. So for whatever reason you prefer that, you can definitely do that. These light gray kind of gets stained a little bit from the Georgia red clay. So the green might have worked a little better if I was worried about that, but I don't really care about that kind of stuff. Now, if this were any of the smaller models, that would pretty much be it. But the extra large model comes with this extra piece here. Okay, that's just an extra, like an added support. Okay, so basically we just put these on. And this is going to go underneath in the middle. This part can be a little bit tricky. Actually, so we're going to lock this in on one side. Then we're going to lock it in on this side. And that is pretty much everything you need to know about the elevated or the Amazon Basic elevated cooling dog bed. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.